We're on the air, guys.
We sure are. We're here. We are, indeed.
It was a little bit of a battle, but we're on the air. And we're back in Providence for the first time since 2019. And being here, Tyler, this is your first time.
It is.
Jeff, I've been fortunate to have you here 4 times now.
Yeah.
I said this on the podcast. I'll say it again. This has never felt this up for grabs. And that's at both levels. It really feels that way this year.
Yeah, I don't think the three of us could agree. If you asked all three of us who's going to win, you're going to get 3 different answers. Absolutely. Like you said, through the 10 teams, Neil, the 6th, the EHL, the 4th, the EHLP. Congratulations to all of them. We got a lot of first-timers.
Yep.
And we got some not-so-first-timers. One of them we're going to see in the first game today, New Hampshire Avalanche.
It's funny. When I posted the ticket punch for everyone, for the Avs, I was like, it's so obvious what I have to say because you can't have the frozen finals without the New Hampshire Avalanche. It feels only fitting, Tyler, you saw them a bunch, that they have to be here. Someone has to go through them for a brand new champion.
It is, Neil, definitely. And the Avalanche proved this year why they've gotten off to such success in their short time as an EHL franchise. When you look at it, they've made the finals 3 separate times, and they've won it 2 out of those 3 times. They've got a great chance here to do it again, but of course, it will never be easy. No championship is. And like you said, Jeff, all 10 teams that are here, EHL and EHLP, they all have a strong chance at winning this weekend.
And of course, today is all about day 1, which includes the Avalanche. It feels only fitting that we're back and we have to drop the puck with them in the first game, right?
Yeah,
and
it does.
Let's talk about them first because it's not the same type of Avalanche team that we're used to, but they're good. And the way that they entered the postseason wasn't, the quote unquote right way. But what they've done in the postseason, I've used this term before. They didn't like it on the podcast. They are the favorites still. Are they, when you look back at the other teams, are we being too harsh with how good those past Avalanche teams were? Is that why it sounds like I'm saying this team isn't that good?
I mean, just looking at today's line chart, right? You see Hotchkiss, Carlson, all those guys, Trussoni, all over 60 points in the regular season. Through the trio, Hotchkiss had the most helpers, and then you got Trussoni had the most goals. I think the one person you got to look at, when we talk about yes, they are 4-0 in the postseason this year, but his numbers, not so great.
Yep.
They won a lot of high-scoring affairs in those first 4 games. Tyler, you're a former goaltender. Playoffs, things tighten up. You don't get a lot of those 6-3, 6-4 type results. So a 2.8 goals against, an 8.95 save percentage. Mobley's got to be a little better than that.
He certainly does, and I think this was an Avs team all year long that showed goal scoring was not a problem for them. And I think I got to call their first game with you, Neil, against the Seacoast Spartans, and Michael Trussoni bursted onto the scene with a 4-point game and made sure everybody in the league was going to know who he was by the end. And if not for Colin Bella's torrid run, it looked like for at least half the season, like Mike Trussoni was going to finish atop the points leaders. And when you put him on a line with Matt Carlson and Aiden Hotchkiss, the magic can really happen with those two. He's going to be on the third line today. That's something they've experimented with over the last month or two, trying to get different looks and get different perspectives up and down their lineup. But when you have a player like Michael Trussoni playing up and down your lineup, it's quite a luxury to have. And I couldn't agree more with you guys in terms of in goal. That will be their biggest question mark in Providence.
And those are the 2 points that I want to get to. I want to get to Trussoni on the third line. I want to get to Mobley. But what you guys talked about there a lot is when it comes to these Avalanche teams, in their history, they've won 1 major award. Nick Scrollis won Defenseman of the Year back in 2018-19. Because you brought up Trussoni. Early on, MVP-type candidate. But because they don't have those award winners, it makes it feel like, is this team that high end, right? But it's because of how deep they are, which gets me to Trussoni. They have the luxury of breaking that line up.
Right.
And at some point, do you have to bring them back together? When could Coach Sorella have to bring them back together here in Providence? How quickly does he go to that?
I mean, he just told me and Tyler he really likes Theo Angelopoulos. And the guy that they slotted in. He's on the first line right wing, right? So maybe that answer is never.
They've also had some great emergences this year, in particular with what Kyle Dan has done for them in the postseason. 6 goals. It's the second most of anybody left in Providence now. And he had 4 in 26 games during the regular season.
4 goals, 5 assists.
He was a fine bottom six forward for them, and he has really emerged in the playoffs. He scored an overtime winner against the Spartans to help them move along. I mean, when you get players like that to step up, and then you have those three and Carlson, Hotchkiss, and Tersonian. Mind you, that's just the forwards we're talking about. We haven't even gone to the blue line yet, and they've got depth in that category as well. So this is an Avs team that, coming into it, certainly a favorite, certain.
So we go to Mobley now, and I'm sure even Coach Torello would say that Ronan Mobley is not Nathan Pickett from the 2018-19 season.
Yep.
The numbers that Nathan Pickett put up in that postseason were just out of this world. But the one thing Mobley does have over all the other goaltenders that are here is he's played in the Frozen Finals game. Now, let's make sure everyone knows that that was the third game last year, and the Avalanche were already in the championship game. Didn't matter what had happened.
Right.
So they lost that game to the Rangers, ultimately lost the championship to the Rangers. But how beneficial will it be for Mobley to have played on this stage before?
I think it is huge, Neil. I think that's a good point. Because especially last year, everyone remembers, real tough season, right? We weren't allowed to have fans. We got to the Frozen Finals. Fans came back in droves. That place was packed. It was loud. So for Mobley, that's a very good point, Neil, to bring that up. That he got in there, gave George McMichael, another guy that was great goaltender that helped the Avalanche with a long postseason run. So I think that is huge. You can speak to it a little more, being a former goalie yourself. He's got a real tough guy to match on the other end with Jack Boschert. But I think Mobley he likes to perform under the bright lights. He was big in the All-Star games this year and stuff. So I think he'll perform. He needs to perform for this team to advance.
And you nail it, Jeff, right there. It's he needs to perform. I mean, this was a guy during the regular season, his numbers were excellent. I mean, you don't post a sub 2 goals against average by accident. You don't post a 935 save percentage by accident. He plays on, obviously, a very strong defensive team. I'm sure we'll talk about the blue line. Guys like Josh Higgins, Alex Muthersbaugh, I mean, those are two towers right there on defense, and certainly limit the shots that he faces. But 125 games this year, this is a guy who's proven a lot in his time here in the Eastern Hockey League. If he can get off to a good start here against an Express team that can surprise some folks offensively, I mean, that's going to be really critical for the Avalanche if they want to find themselves playing on Sunday.
That's a great transition into their opponent, because Jeff mentioned Jack Boschert, who today is the MVP of the playoffs.
Without a doubt.
He has to be. And I still cannot wait to ask Josh Holmstrom what he said in between the first and second periods of the Wizards series in Game 3, because they were down 2-0, and now they're all the way here. Is this how good Walpole is, and we just kind of saw them as a dark horse all year, or is this Jack Boschert putting the team on his back and just carrying them here?
I think it's a little combination of both. Much like this year's Avalanche team isn't like other teams in the past, the same can be said for Walpole. Go back into the rewind machine. Look at last year's team, right? Zach Simon, someone that you loved in fantasy.
Fantasy guy.
Love Zach Simon. With Coach Campbell, with the Minot Minotauros now. But Lorenzo Marcolin, that team was deep with scorers last year. And they had the goaltending with Mason Palmer. So now you got the Pages of the world, Percy, shooters, a lot of returner guys, a lot of veterans that know what it takes to get the job done, and they want revenge. They got revenge against the Rangers after losing in that series last year, beat them this year to get here. So I mean, it's a different team. They play a lot of defense. They don't give up a lot of goals. They have a lot of two-way type guys. That's how you know better than most. You called all their games this year.
I saw certainly a lot of them.
Only 3 guys with double-digit goals for them this year.
That's, I think, the part of the team that sort of they can lull their opponents to sleep in that way. They don't have a guy really on that roster who you might have to circle down and be like, we're going to have to really keep an eye out on this guy. They've got 4 lines that Coach Holmstrom trusted them all year long, up and down the lineup. But there are players out there that can make a difference. Justin Guelph has scored some huge goals for them in this postseason alone. He led the way for them offensively during the regular season, but
probably their best finisher, best sniper, you'd say.
Certainly up front. And while they have players that are good, the story of this Express team was the 2 men that they had in net, and obviously Jack Boschert taking the reins of things. But him and Scott Bird were very, very reliable this year. And without those 2 in net, it would have been a different year for Walpole, no doubt about it. And Boschert's got a .968 save percentage in the postseason. The next highest mark is Joseph Henson at .950. Imagine having a save percentage better than 95%. I mean, .950 is nothing no, that's no
Nothing to
slouch
sneeze
there,
at, no.
right?
Yeah.
And
Even the other Kolodnik 923.
Right,
I know
I
we'll
mean,
get to them
all
later.
these, all the goaltenders here really have had strong postseason runs, but a 968 save percentage through 2 rounds, that is certainly something that's going to catch the opposition's eye. He's
And
going to be a tough nut to crack.
And you bring up some of the big goals that they scored. Maybe the biggest goal for them was game 1 of their Rangers series. To win
Yes.
on the road and go back up 1-0. It almost felt like, not to sound like a betting man, right? But you're going back home, right? Did you get a chance to talk to Coach Holmstrom? How important did he say winning game 1 was of that series?
Didn't get a chance to talk to him after that game,
Yeah.
but I know that when that goal went in, it wasn't a clean goal by any sense of the imagination.
They really are the playoffs. if
I'm
we're
sure.
honest.
I'm sure Nate Miller wanted that back more than any of the other ones, without a doubt. But what I took away from that game was after that goal went in, usually an overtime winner, guys rush off the bench and celebrate, and that happened. But after about a minute of celebration, if that, I saw so many guys with their labored breathing and their hands on their knees, and I think even Jack Boschert was down on one knee after celebrating to catch his breath really quickly. I think after that goal went in, they had that real brief moment of elation, but then I think it all started to hit them like, not only did we just play a double overtime game, we're like a week removed from a triple overtime game.
I know, it's just,
And
they're only
we now
lost
have a
the
chance to win the series on home ice, like you said. That is a roller coaster of emotions to go through, and I think they managed that really well all year long and through the playoffs too. You mentioned, Neil, that game 3 they had against the Wizards. I was there for the call at Rodman, and after that first period, I mean, it looked like we were going to be talking about the Wizards here in Providence. Honestly, I mean, they came out 20 shots on net, up 2-0, giveaways left and right from the Express. I mean, it looked like it was going to end in a blowout, and they turned it around and won 5-2. So don't count out the Red Train, and I think the Avalanche, it should be a great first game in Providence.
It's a perfect first game in Pool A. Of course, the Wolves are watching, and the Wolves won an overtime game because then neither team can get 3 points in the game with the round-robin points structure, right?
That's the way this postseason's gone. Everybody's participating in overtime. Wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple of those going OT.
It's been a trend
this week.
What's cool about those two teams, what they have in common with the other two teams, the Little Flyers and Railers, at one point this season, all 4 teams were ranked number 1 in the league. And when you go to that other matchup, you can make the case that for the Railers, they were more of the number 1 team early, and the Little Flyers were more the number 1 team late. I went into this with my bold prediction on the podcast. Everyone heard it. I said we're going to end this postseason the same way we ended the 2018-19 postseason, which is a Little Flyers Avalanche championship game. For me, and I hear your thoughts, no team here is more potent than this Little Flyers team.
Yeah, absolute wagon. Another team that can do it from all ends. You want to snipe, you want to get in a high-scoring affair, Adam Beauvais, Sava Smirnov, Connor McNell, Harrison Dumas, Kyle Patton. Jeez, we didn't even how crazy is that? You wait until you mention the captain at the bottom of those guys. But it just goes to show you the general himself is another important piece. Joseph Henson, who you mentioned briefly, another important guy. He's been great goaltender. And he didn't get the net last year for the Philadelphia Little Flyers. It was Kubik that was in net. So Henson, I'm sure, is really hungry to get out on this ice and to help his Little Flyers have a deep run. But then an interesting thing too is these two teams only saw each other once this year, and it was a showcase game.
Yes.
So that is different because we played the 2 25-minute halves instead of the customary 3 20-minute periods. I think I was on the call for that. It was up at Exeter. It was pop out to the wall. Yeah, that was a fun little time. But yeah, the Little Flyers won that 5-2. Like you had said, Neil, too. 16-2. The Little Flyers were from January 17th on.
And you know what January 17th was? That game against the Railers.
Yep.
They were on the back end of, I believe, a 5 or 6 game losing streak. So maybe did their dip, because every team goes through a dip, right? The Avs went through a dip.
All these teams
went through a dip. When is the perfect time to endure that dip? Is it midwinter like that?
I think it's interesting because I think midwinter, you could make that argument. The Avs went through theirs late in the year when you think about it. Like their final 10 or 12 games was really their worst stretch of the year, which you might
3-7 in the last 10.
You might look at that and say, oh, that's a catastrophe right there. That's a disaster. But here they are. They swept their way through 2 rounds, and they're here again. So these teams, like you said, all 4 of them had their moments. I don't think there's ever an ideal time to skid.
Yeah.
But the good teams, or what separates, I should say, the great teams from the good teams, are those teams that know how to stop the skid.
Yes.
And I think for the Flyers in particular, was it you, Jeff, that called them a wagon? I mean,
Just now,
like they are
2 minutes ago.
They really are the embodiment
They
of
are.
that word. They have 4 guys with 50+ points on their roster. I mean, we just talked about the trio that the Avs have with Tersoni, Carlson, and Hotchkiss.
Yeah.
I mean, Philadelphia is the only other team, in my opinion, that has the forward core to match that along with the depth, because then they've guys, like you said, Dumas, Tyler Hissong's another one. Those guys were borderline
There's
30.
Franco on the back end.
They were
Yeah,
30.
talking
They
about
were
their
almost
defense.
30-point guys this year. So
So that makes my next point here. Little Flyers have won 4 regular season championships, right? And we all know the curse in the EHL. The regular season champions never won the playoff championship. Continued this year. Because it was the Rangers.
Right.
In the EHLP, it's only happened once also. So really, in the E show, don't win the regular season title, right?
Avoid it.
Is basically what they're saying. But for the Little Flyers, so they've had so many good teams over the years. How can it not feel like a bust this week if they don't win the whole thing?
I think you're
Which team too?
But
We're not getting to the Premier yet.
The
We're
Little
staying with
Flyers,
the
right?
EHL,
The EHL first. The little
But
EHL
I
first.
think that's a safe thing to say, Neil, for sure, because they're not bringing a lot of these guys back next year.
No,
I mean,
they're all a lot of age outs.
A lot of age outs, and there were some guys that the returners from last year. They're gonna have that feeling still, and they know what's on the line here. I mean, this is a team they had 64 points this season. That South Division was such a gauntlet to go through, and not only did they go through it, they swept through it. I mean, granted, it was going through Team Maryland first. Okay, we probably would have expected that outcome, right? But to handle the 87s as they did, I mean, that was for me the eye opener for this Philadelphia team, and I had to put a little bit of respect on their name because I believe in my podcast appearance.
Yes.
I had Team Maryland giving them a hard time and emerging from that semifinal
me too
series
for a while. Me too.
So I'm glad I'm not alone. I'm glad I'm not alone there. But they made me eat my words, and you know what? That's a great thing for them because they've just been not only in the postseason, but like you said, Jeff, the 16-2 run, just total.
Make it through the road. Railers in just their 3rd year, right? So they can say that they're the youngest team here, right? What a weird postseason because no one's played more games. Maybe the Express play more minutes
on time on ice,
right? But for the Railers to win Game 1 of each of their series in a way where you went to bed after Game 1 saying this is over, and then to lose Game 2 in each of their series and go to bed saying, "Oh God, is our season going to end tomorrow?"
Right.
But they've been through it. They've gone through it all. Are they going to surprise us and go toe-to-toe with the Little Flyers in their high-scoring offense tonight?
Well, you were just mentioning the intermission locker room speech.
Yes.
Same thing happened with Sean Bertoni, Coach of the Year.
Yes.
When they were down 3-1 with the Apple Core.
Yep.
In the must-win Game 3, they win 6-3.
That's crazy.
Blow doors in the second half of that game. Like you just said, though, them and the Wolves played those games. Kind of a technicality when you add up the minutes with the Express and some of these other teams.
Especially just raising their hand in the background right now.
And actually, I believe the Railers are the one team, too, that's been off the longest, too.
Yep.
But they came here. They were one of the only teams that were able to get in and practice.
Yep.
Sorry, not able. They wanted to get in. Everyone had the option to get in.
Got the ice.
They were the only ones that chose it.
Yep.
And then you got Olivieri and Dulac are atop our leaderboard for points getters. Another storyline with Kalanick, too.
Yep.
Didn't get it. Only got in the net once last year. Lost. It was Sebastian Woods that was in the net for them last year.
Yeah.
So another guy like Henson that wants to get in this building and do well for his Railers team. And
like most of the teams here too, like it's goaltending outwards. And with the Railers, Stefan Kuhanek, he's really been in his whole EHL career just consistent is the word that comes to mind when I think of him. He might not be top 3 or top 5 statistically in every category, but he's just solid, and he's always been solid. And he's bouncing back in the postseason too. I know that it was a rough second half for
Yes,
everybody, not
yes.
just him.
What
But
about Cam Carroll? That's right.
he's got a
Lapierre.
923 save percentage in the playoffs. Goals against is flat at 2. Those are pretty much on par with his career numbers, and
2 shutouts.
he's going to have his hands full today,
Yep.
though, and he's not a stranger to it. The Railers, like we talked about, defensively strong in the first half, got a little leaky in the second half, though. He faced 40-plus shots 4 times in the second half, and went 2-2 though in those games. So he's the kind of guy. If Philly comes out and peppers them early, and he gets to feel the puck a little bit, and maybe makes a 10-bell save early on in the game, that could get him locked and loaded, and that could help the Railers tremendously in holding off Philly this afternoon, or tonight, I should say.
For sure. And I mentioned this at the beginning. We have a Frozen Finals that feels very up in the air, right? Up in the air. What a
100%.
perfect way to start off the Frozen Finals. For me, a chance to actually step back a little bit and enjoy it too. I've never not called a Frozen Finals game.
I'll miss you up there, bud.
You guys enjoy it. Tyler's got the play-by-play for all the EHL games, doing the color and PA. We also have Chris Russo and Lauren Smith on with the EHL games as well. Then we shuffle it up for the EHLP games. Let's have some fun this week, guys.
Let's do it.
We've got a great crew on hand. Looking forward to it.
The best.